Let's give Brian a warm welcome.
Thanks, buddy. He started it. He's good like that. I am an alcoholic. My home group is the Thursday night study group, and my name is Brian.
Brian.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Glad it's over. No, I'm just kidding. My wife is glad it's over, though, which is kind of nice, actually. I mean, think about it. My wife, we've been married 14 years almost, and she still likes me and would like to spend some time with me some evenings of the week. I mean, that's actually a pretty good deal. That's a good gig if you can get it, I can promise you that. So, step 12 tonight. I don't know why, but that Mike over there who read How It Works for us, he's one of the classiest acts in Alcoholics Anonymous that I've ever come across. Our county, our intergroup office owes a debt of gratitude to him and several other fellows that steered AA intergroup in Broward through a really, really, really rocky time. And my hat is always off to you when I see you in AA. Thank you, Mike. Step 12. Okay, we can do step 12. Step 12 is step 12 is really three parts. And before we get into that, I'm going to probably recap all the rest of the steps because that's what I do. I'm repetitive, and I'm repetitive because step 12 is, the last of 12 steps that without context means nothing, I think. And so, we didn't come to a meeting and start talking about step 12 without having some understanding of why we were even here. And I know that the reason why I'm here is clear. I would have been dead were it not for the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's just a fact of my life and my drinking. I weighed 125 pounds when I stopped. Alcohol wasn't my only problem, and it took me a little while to realize I was an alcoholic. I was telling a story earlier. I mean, I was in AA sober for a couple of years before the doctor's opinion was ever explained to me, and I understood what it was to be an alcoholic. And when it was explained to me, it was like, oh my God, that's my problem. I mean, I realized that I was sitting in a big book study, and a couple of old timers were talking about hours of the body, obsession of the mind, and they were reading right from the doctor's opinion. And they were talking about how when an alcoholic takes a drink of alcohol, their body reacts with a physical craving for more. And they cannot control their drinking once they start to drink because of this physical craving. And normal drinkers never have this craving and don't understand what it's like to be an alcoholic. And when they started describing the physical sensation what happens when take a drink, that no matter how I intended the evening to start, whether I intended to only have a few drinks or only drink that evening or only drink a certain amount, once I started drinking, all bets were off. There was no telling how much I would actually drink that evening. And ordinarily, whoever I was drinking with, they would go home and I would go, I would go out. I would, it's time, I'm just getting started usually when everyone else is finishing up. And I never understood that until I realized that I have this physical allergy with respect to alcohol, that my body craves more alcohol once I start. And the more I drink, the more I crave it. But that fact alone is not why I'm an alcoholic, not alone. Because the thing that you do if you have that condition is you quit drinking, right? I mean, if you're allergic to bananas, if you break out in a rash, or my brother, his face would blow up when he ate a banana. I mean, if you have that condition and you go to a doctor, they determine that you're allergic to bananas and they tell you, don't do that. Don't eat bananas. You don't go home and go, it was those people I was eating bananas with, or it's those Dole bananas. I got to stay away from the Dole bananas. If I stick with the Chiquita, I think I'll be okay. I mean, that's just not a conversation that ever comes up, right? That's because people who are allergic to bananas or ragweed or anything else, they don't have an obsession for that, right? But my mind can't see that alcohol disagrees with me. Just before I take a drink, I don't remember the jail cell, the lost job, the wrecked car, the disgusted family and friends. That's not what I'm thinking about just before I take a drink. I'm thinking only about what alcohol is going to do for me. And I'm able to suppress all the things that alcohol has done to me. And so I believe a lie. I believe it's okay to take a drink. And once I drink, I aggravate the allergy and I'm off again. Our book says this is repeated over and over again unless a psychic change can occur. And the psychic change is a change in the mind. There's nothing I can do about the physical allergy. I'm just as allergic, if not, some say, more allergic to alcohol today than I ever was. But I don't drink. So, but something has to change in the mind, right? And Alcoholics Anonymous said that a psychic change could fix that. And that second step said a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps is the answer for that. That's the answer they found. That's the cool thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is that we have a text that is basically a text about what happened. For centuries, there had been alcoholics and no recovery from alcoholism. And then all of a sudden in the 1930s, some alcoholics got sober. And they got sober following a very specific, precise set of directions. And they passed that experience on to us in the text of Alcoholics Anonymous. They told us what happened, what they had to do, and the results that they got from that. And they put it all down in a book so that you and I, 85 years later nearly, could have it. Is it 85 years? 85? Long time. I was expecting Mike to answer. That we would have it, right? So that we would have it, and we would have it intact just as they did it. So we have the story of what they did and how they did it in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, so that all we have to do is do the same thing that they did and get the same results, which is a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening. You'll notice the 12th step, the very first thing, is having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. That's the promise in step 2, is that, hey, if you do what we did, if you're open to the fact that there is a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity, and you do what we did, you will get the result, which is a spiritual awakening or a spiritual experience. So that's what they told us at step 2. They made it as easy as possible for us to. I mean, they really handheld us through the whole believing in God thing, didn't they? I mean, they didn't even require that we believe in God. They required only that we be willing to believe that there might be some power greater than us that could restore us to sanity. Define as necessary or define as you wish. And that the only hard and fast rules that they had, or the only stumbling blocks, if you look at the chapter We Agnostics, the real stumbling blocks to coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity really are our own fixed ideas and fixed attitudes. That to the extent that we were willing to let go of our thoughts and attitudes and our beliefs about ourselves and the world around us, to the extent that we were willing to loosen our grip on those and become willing to change in that respect, that we could have results. It even said this, which I still find flooring, right? It even said that being an agnostic or an atheist was not necessarily an obstacle to having a spiritual experience, which, I mean, when I saw that, I was thinking to myself, blasphemy. You know what I mean? It just seems it just doesn't even add up to me. But being an atheist or an agnostic is not necessarily an obstacle to having a spiritual experience, as long as you have an open mind. Right? As long as you're willing to look at and stop drawing hard and fast lines around how I think it is. My friend Joe always says the way that I think it is might not be the way that it is. And if I can just have that thought, maybe how I think it is not the way that it is, then the program of Alcoholics Anonymous can work. And so for those of us who knew we were powerless, which I did, and who could conceive of the possibility that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, which I did, we were instructed about some steps. Some steps were laid out for us and how it works, and we were asked to choose whether we're in or out. That's basically what the third step is. Here's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's the work that's ahead of us. Are you in or are you out? And I was in. I mean, where else could I go? I had no other answer. I had no other solution. By the way, that fact alone is what has most of us get over the God idea in the second step. The fact that alcohol has kicked the shit out of us so bad that we're willing to think or believe anything different. And so I was in, and my sponsor and I did the third step, and he said, we'll see. And he spelled out how to do a fourth step and sent me on my way. And when I came back with my fourth step started and some questions about that, then he knew that I had decided in step 3 to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. The decision is just air coming off of my mouth, off of my lips, until I actually started doing the work necessary in order to have that happen. And the fourth step was the beginning of that work. And so in the fourth step, I got an opportunity to see what you were talking about. And I got to see how it fit me. Because there were two vague concepts when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. I heard you talking about selfishness and self-centeredness and dishonesty and fear and resentments. I heard you talking about those things. And I read the English language, so I kind of knew what the words meant, but I didn't necessarily know how it applied to me. I never saw myself as those things. I never really understood that about myself. And so the fourth step was an opportunity for me to see where and how I'm resentful and fearful and selfish and dishonest and self-seeking and frightened, and how and not just have these things be vague concepts that I understand, but understand exactly how I fit the description and where and how I fit the description and have a look at the ways in which I am those things. I had never considered that. Why would somebody ever consider that? Was my thinking. Like, why would anybody do a personal inventory on themselves? It seemed a foreign concept to me. But you know what? Apparently, alcoholics aren't the only ones that do this. Apparently, there's lots of people out there who understand themselves very well, who never came near death, killing themselves with drugs and alcohol. Who knew? But the fourth step was the first time I did. It was the first time I ever looked at myself through that lens of selfish dishonesty, resentment, and fear, and saw just how and in what ways I was those things. Years later to really realize that was only a glimpse of it. Even today, I'm selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened and inconsiderate. It's not going to go away. As long as I'm a living, breathing human being, I'm going to be those things. If that's for me, take a message. Just kidding. It's a thing I say. So, having identified the grossest handicaps, I then shared that with my sponsor and had a face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball conversation about not only the things that I had done, but the motives and thinking that went along with it. The first intimate conversation, you might say, that I ever had with another man. And he helped steer me through that process a little bit. He helped me see where I wasn't being completely honest, or I was taking too much responsibility, or I really probably wasn't that important to those people, he helped kind of guide that conversation a little bit, and he shared stories about himself, so I didn't feel alone in that conversation, and he made me able to fully unload that catalog of who I was to him, or at least to the extent that I knew who I was at the time. 6 and 7, I have shared in here, were a tougher road for me because, I like things to be one and done. I've heard since the time I've been in Alcoholics Anonymous that there's no graduating from this thing. But I am a graduate. I like to graduate. I like to get results and then, all right, let's stop doing that now for a while. I mean, it's just how I am. It's how I don't just a part of my. It doesn't have to be, I suppose. But up to now, it's just been my experience that I like to get. I got through 4 and 5. In the context of 6 and 7, I was absolutely ready to have all of those things removed and humbly ask God to remove them. No problem. The problem was that the next day I woke up and there I was with all of my default ways of thinking and believing and being and I thought it was going to be that simple though. I thought it was going to be, okay, that's done. I never have to be that way again and move on. And so it was a slower process for me to realize that I still today have all of the character defects that I've ever inventoried. The only question is whether or not I'm practicing them now. I am absolutely capable of selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. I'm absolutely capable of thinking and acting for my own benefit at the expense of others. I've demonstrated it over and over and over and over again. I'm not done. There's no graduating. As long as I'm a living, breathing human being, I'm going to have those things. But it's not doom and gloom, though, because the good news is that I've also exercised, that's the word I like to use, or practiced some character assets along the way also. And so in finding out who and what I really am, I've been able to identify the things that God could really use some help with, and I've been able to ask God for help with those specific things and make progress in those things. And so along the way, I've learned to be loving, caring, considerate, kind, a good friend, a good listener. I've learned to be those things as well, and those muscles are now stronger than they've ever been, and maybe some of the other muscles are weaker than they've ever been. Doesn't mean I can't pick them up from time to time and try them out, particularly when it'll suit me or hurt you, because I will. But what if I've learned anything, I was the kind of person who avoided self-honesty. I was the kind of person who would think ill of myself for even being dishonest or selfish or doing things wrong, and so ill of myself that I did not want to look. And that's still the case, I guess. But what I've learned in this process is that having character defects is good news. It's good news, because it's only when I have character defects that I ask God for help with them. And it's only if I can identify what and where they're happening in my life that I can actually move closer to God. So it's like having selfishness and dishonesty seems like a bad thing, but the very fact that the next step is asking God to take me to something better, having selfishness and dishonesty moves me closer to God. One of my favorite sentences in the Big Book is as we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us, which I like to use as a mantra in the present tense. As I draw near to him, he discloses himself to me, because that's how it works. I need the reminder that it's not done because I did an inventory once, or I made some amends once, or I helped somebody once. I need the reminder that in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, what we've been talking about is moving towards God's will for us, from selfishness and self-centeredness, from self-will, and that is an ever-evolving process, not something that can never be done, or it's never complete. And so that was a painful lesson for me, I think. I think I came to that slower than most people in Alcoholics Anonymous do, but a necessary process in order for me to have it the way that I have it today. Making amends is another difficult process for me, and a process that I think, the good news about being a sober member in Alcoholics Anonymous for a long period of time is, to the extent that people are still alive, or I guess in my case it was a little easier because I was so young when I got started, is that my understanding of how I've hurt people has evolved over time, and my capacity or my understanding of what might be necessary to make amends has also expanded. And so, I've been sober a long time, and particularly with family, that has borne a lot of fruit. I made a lot more progress at years 9 and 10 with respect to making amends with family and putting things back together in a way that I was a central or an essential part of my family, thinking mostly of my mother, father, and 2 brothers. Than was possible at year 2 or 3 or 4, at least for me. It doesn't have to be that way. Most people that I know, go through a lot of these phases a lot earlier on in their sobriety than I did. For me, it took some time because I'm thick. I don't listen well. I've learned. I actually, that's not true. I listen well. I listen well today, but one of the things that I discovered was a huge failing for me, especially in my first few years of sobriety, is I did not listen. I just didn't listen. I heard big book people telling me what the answer was in my first couple of years of sobriety. And I also heard people say, just don't drink and go to meetings. I said, hey, that sounds easier. Let's do that. I heard them. I just didn't listen. And so I've learned to listen to people in Alcoholics Anonymous in a way that I never have before. in step 10, we learned that the whole point of going through 4 through 9, or 1 through 9, was to learn how. That the program of Alcoholics Anonymous actually starts in 10. That we've been talking about these steps as individual things up to that point because we needed to learn how. We needed to learn what they were talking about. But step 10 tells us to take what we learned in 4 through 9 and put it into practice every day. To constantly inventory and constantly be sharing ourselves with another person and asking God for help and making amends where we've done harm. It's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 all the time. 4 through 9 all the time. And in that process of trying to apply the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to my daily life, I have learned that I am recovering when I'm doing it and I am not when I'm not. It's that simple. And my poor wife is usually the one that knows before anybody else which one I am today. And for me, particularly, I don't think I can do step 10 without step 11. And also, I don't think I can do step 11 to much effect unless I've been doing a pretty decent step 10. And so, to me, we went through the first 9 steps to put us into the process of living the AA way of life day by day, which is 10 and 11 and 12. And for me, my day starts in the morning with seeking direction for my life. And that's, I have to start my day on purpose. I have to start my life on purpose. My life on automatic results in selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And it just does. And it's not instant, it's gradual. It's a matter of fact, it's just gradual enough that if I'm not paying attention, I won't even notice it. That's the fact, right? And so what happens is, I get myself into a argument with somebody or do something that I'm embarrassed by or whatever, and I'm jolted into this reality that I'm selfish and dishonest and have to fix this, and I have to work hard at getting back to that place where I was in touch with my inventory and my sponsor or friends in AA, sharing myself, asking God for help, making amends when I've hurt people, and slowly but surely through 10 and then 11, I could start my day on purpose. I was in touch with my inventory enough that I knew what I was in the greatest need of and could ask God for direct help with the character building that I needed for that day based on yesterday's inventory. And those two things working together, they work together for me when I'm practicing them every day. And I'm the type of person who likes to take breaks. I don't know why, but I like to take breaks. And I can just tell you from personal experience, if you cannot take breaks, you probably will be better off than I ever will be in AA. I told you I'm good at talking about this stuff, but I'm not as good at practicing it. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm that guy that will just slowly start to minimize the importance of these things in my life and start to spend less and less time on them until my inventory in the morning with my meditation is literally a minute and a half, and it's not enough to be at maximum effectiveness. And until X, the argument with my wife, or the embarrassing thing I said or did, or whatever it is that has me go, oh geez, let's, and then I dig in again. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way for you. I'm just telling you that's that way for me. But I'm at my best when I'm putting these two things together every single day, 10 and 11. When I'm using my meditation to guide, or I'm using my inventory to guide my meditation, to ask for what I'm in the greatest need of, and moving forward. Because when I'm in touch with my inventory, when I'm clear about who and what I really am and what's really going on for me these days, my day can be much more productive because I can ask for what I really need. And I'm not just doing platitudes. I'm not just saying, God, please make me a better person. I'm saying, God, I'm going to see him today. Please remind me to watch my tongue, or hold my judgment, or be honest for a change, or whatever. When I'm in touch with my inventory, then my meditation serves my day much better. And my meditation, if I'm using my meditation wisely, my meditation actually has the potential to impact my life. The cool thing about Alcoholics Anonymous for me is that it has allowed me to dramatically change my life. And all of the people in my life are better. All of the situations are better. And none of them changed at all. The only one that changed was me. I used to have it that life was coming at me, and that I was a victim, and that I was little that I could do to make any difference. And what I've learned has turned that upside down on its head. If I've learned anything in my time in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've learned that I'm living into my life. And how I think and what I believe sets up the world that I'm living into. And that if I'm coming from love and kindness and peace and serenity, then I end up living into a world of such. And I have little time and space for argument and fault finding and judgment and all of the petty things that will otherwise wrap me up and I can get really self-righteous about. And so the way that I live my life is always better served by being in touch with my inventory, knowing what God's will is for me that day, or at least having an inkling or an idea or some thought or contemplation on what God's will is for me in those situations that I've been struggling with. And then when that's the case, the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous happens. A small change in my attitude or behavior, a small change in my attitude or behavior at any particular time in the day has ripple effects in dramatic changes in my actual life and in my results. And AA has proven to me that over and over and over again. I still don't know if there's a God or what his name is. But I do know this. I know that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous works, and I know that I could not have achieved the results I've achieved on my own. That it's absolutely impossible. I never have had the smarts, the skills, the knowledge to do any of this on my own. That it's only when I'm seeking a higher power's will for the specific things that I'm challenged with. And to me, that's what it is. I'm not asking God to make me a better person every day. I'm saying, God, this is where I'm falling short. This is where I need the most help. This is where I'm really, really struggling, right? And asking him for help with that. And contemplating what he would have me be. I don't even know who he is. Don't have the slightest clue as to who or what God is. Alcoholics Anonymous never taught me that. Believe me, that was what I was expecting to be taught when I got here. As a matter of fact, that's what I was almost demanding to be taught when I got here. I was very attached to the who and the what God is, and what's that look like? What's that? The longer I've been here, the less I know about God, and the more I know about his will for my life. I don't know how to make any better sense of it than that. So all of that brings us to step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Somewhere in that process, the greatest miracle that has ever happened in my life occurred. And that is that I no longer want to drink. And as I sit here right now, it seems like, of all of the results that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has brought to me in my life, as I think about my life today, the things and the people that are in my life today, not drinking seems the least significant one of all of the things that AA has brought into my life today. I'm not supposed to be living this life today. I was never on track for this life. The life that I live today is not possible for a guy who started out where I started out. It's just not even possible. I don't know how to explain it. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous has allowed me to not only not drink, but the miracle, and this to me this is the real miracle, because I didn't drink for times before Alcoholics Anonymous. But not drinking always looked like thinking about not drinking. It always looked like planning on not drinking. It always looked like avoiding situations where I might be drinking. And what you can get by that is that I was always thinking about drinking or not drinking. Drinking was in control of my life, whether I was drinking or not. I could not escape. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me complete relief from the obsession to drink. I am never thinking about drinking. Almost never. I mean, it's not that I never thought about taking a drink. I've just never actually thought about pouring one in my mouth. I mean, which is a big difference, right? I think about drinking, and then I think about, I got to see that person today. Don't forget to make that phone call. Oh, yeah, that's right. You got to finish this project before, I just move on to the next thought, I used to be that I would think about drinking, and I would think about almost nothing else until I was drinking, right? I had an obsession. I had an absolute inability to see the true from the false. My mind would lock on to drinking, and no matter what else I was doing or involved in, it stayed tracked to drinking until I was drinking. And today, that's not even an issue. I don't even think about not drinking. And today, it seems not even a significant fact of my life that I don't drink. But it's the greatest miracle that's ever occurred in my life. My life was trash when I was drinking. I absolutely had no power whatsoever to accomplish anything or anything. As a matter of fact, before Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't even know what my life was. Like, as I think about my life and the things that are of importance and value to me today, right now, none of that did I know before the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that fact has nothing to do with drinking. I just didn't know. I just didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I did not understand what was important. The things that I thought were important are just not important. And the things that I valued the least then are the most cherished gifts that I have in my life today. And so I think my life is a miracle. But if you offered me this life when I was in my cups, I would have said, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't even want that. But thank God, Alcoholics Anonymous is the way that it is. And the reason I came here, the reason I did this stuff, is because I know that I'm a dead man without it. That's all I knew, and that's all I needed to know. And so I did it. And Alcoholics Anonymous has brought me into an understanding of my life that was not even fathomable to me beforehand. Alcoholics Anonymous, in exchange for that awesome life, for the awesome life that I get to live, has only asked very little of me. And the very little that it has asked is for me to be available to help the next guy when asked. And I don't turn my back on that, ever. I feel like the only place to be available to help somebody else is in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. How am I available to anybody? I'm not one of those guys who goes to a meeting every day. I basically have my home group and the guys that I sponsor, and occasionally I get asked to do something like this. There's actually a beginner's meeting that I like to go to from time to time when I'm working with a newcomer. But that's it. I mean, my life is not going to meetings every day. My life is living the program of Alcoholics Anonymous every single day. And minimum participation in Alcoholics Anonymous for me is having a home group and having my butt in a chair in that home group every week. Because that's where membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is. I'm not just a member of Alcoholics Anonymous at large. I'm a member of the Thursday night study group that meets in Fort Lauderdale every Thursday night at 7:30. That's my home group. That's where you'll find me every single week, every single year. All right, maybe 48 or 49 weeks out of the year. But the intention is to be there every week of the year. I remember there was a period of time, and this is the period of time where this commitment to home group was pressed into my psyche. And it was a period of time where in 4 years I had missed my home group, which then was the Wednesday night study group in Pompano. In 4 years I had missed the meeting 3 times. And that was unheard of. I'm not the guy who makes a commitment and then backs it up by doing it. That's not me. I don't know who that guy is, but it's not me, right? I had plans to meet some people tonight at 6 o'clock. Guess what time I was there? 6 o'clock. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, just like here, I'm supposed to be here at 8 o'clock, and I get here at 7:59, 8 o'clock, 8:01 sometimes. But I'm there, right? Like I'm there, and for me, that's not normal. That's not a part of who I was before Alcoholics Anonymous. And to me, it's one of the things that my sponsor was an absolute jerk about. He just was. He was a jerk about commitment to your home group. If I missed the Wednesday night study group, John said, "Who died?" Because the only excuse for missing your home group was if you or somebody in your family had died, right? So he wanted to know who died. I mean, if you walked into the Wednesday night study group late, like if you walked in after the prayer, you'd have like 12, as you were coming through the room, you'd have like 12 group members with their watches in the air. because they were just assholes about commitment to home group. They just were. I think it saved my life. There have been times in my sobriety that I have not felt like being here. I don't feel like going. I'm tired. I'm not feeling well. Oh, it's a long drive. I really don't want to, I believe me, just like I had thousands of excuses for drinking, I got thousands of excuses why I can't be somewhere that I don't want to be. And you know what I would think about next? I would think about John asking me who died. Or I'd think about members of the Wednesday night study group with their watches in their hair. And I would get off my ass, tired and lazy, and drive it to a meeting. And be glad that I did after the fact. Be glad that I did after that. See somebody that I hadn't seen in a while. Whatever. And sometimes I think about, what is it? I mean, in 29 years of sobriety, why me? Like, I know people, I feel like I know people in AA who have worked harder at these 12 steps than I ever have, who are not here 29 years later. Sometimes I think it's luck. Sometimes I think it's a fluke. And then sometimes I think it's because I had a sponsor who was an absolute jerk about me being at one group every single week and pressed that into my skull so hard that I've kept it up for a really long time. Right? So and I do. I think sometimes I think that the length of my sobriety, the reason why I've never lost touch with Alcoholics Anonymous is that in my mind, the minimum level of participation is having a home group and having my butt be in that chair every single week. Because every single week I'm at an AA meeting where I can change my mind about not wanting to be here or not feeling like being here or being too tired to be here or whatever it is. And then the next newcomer asks me to sponsor them, and then here I go again. Which brings me to the principle, really, of the 12th step, which is helping other alcoholics. The only thing that Alcoholics Anonymous has ever asked of me is to be available to help another alcoholic. And I will tell you with absolute certainty that I have learned more from the people that I've helped in Alcoholics Anonymous than I had ever learned from doing the steps myself. And that sounds really, really crazy, but I cannot tell you how many times that working with somebody else has opened up just a little bit of perspective on AA in a way that I hadn't seen it before. Like, I see it through their eyes and go, oh, or I've been like, this has happened several times. I'm sitting in the middle of listening to somebody else's fifth step. And in my mind, not out loud, but in my mind, I'm scratching my head going, oh shit, I do that. As they're sharing with me, and I never even looked at it the way that they just looked at it. And so I never saw that about myself. I can't tell you how many little things like that have changed my perspective on certain ways that I am and things that I do and beliefs that I have that have helped me grow. That have made huge differences in how and who I am as a person today. AA changed my life. Working with others has changed it over and over and over and over again. And I'm extremely grateful and proud to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not the kind of person who breaks my anonymity outside of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't like to do that. I don't like other people to do it especially. But mostly because I like to be the one to tell them. Anyway, that's off topic, I think, but I do. I like to be the one to tell them. I like somebody to get to know me, and then later on find out that I'm, an ex-con, alcoholic, drug addict. I like them to find out later. Helping other alcoholics and practicing these principles in all of our affairs. I was having a discussion last week after the meeting, and I know that we have. I know I've said this, I think, in this room before. I know that we have principles behind the steps. But I also know that if you actually peeled those steps off the wall, you won't find any. The 12th step says, practice these principles in all of our affairs. And there's nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with practicing honesty and brotherly love and integrity and the principles that people have attached to the steps and quote unquote put behind the steps. There's nothing wrong with practicing those types of principles as a way of life. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. We all should aspire to practice those kinds of principles in our life. The caveat that I have with that language in Alcoholics Anonymous is that that's not what the 12th step is asking me to do. That's not what the directions for recovery are asking me to do. The directions for recovery are asking me to practice the steps themselves as a way of life. The actual program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the steps themselves are the principles. And to me, that's inventory, confession, repentance and amends, prayer, meditation, and helpfulness to others. Those are the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. They're the steps themselves: inventory, confession, repentance, and amends, prayer, meditation, and helpfulness to others. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous has asked me to practice as a way of life and put into all of my affairs. Hey, this is a great hour. You are all nice people for an hour, and I assure you that I am on my best behavior the hour of a day that I'm in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you followed me around every day for weeks at a time, you would wonder why in the hell they have me doing the step meeting on Friday nights at the Sober Today Club. I promise you would, because I can show my ass with the best of them out there. And I'm not saying that to let myself off the hook. I'm on the hook for that. That's my life. That's my behavior. I suffer consequences for when I'm showing my ass out. I mean, all of that. But the truth of the matter is, I'm on my best behavior during the hour that I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. What about the 8 hours or more that I spend at work every day, 5 days a week, right? Can I practice the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous there? Can I be in inventory, confession, repentance, amends, prayer, meditation, and helpfulness to others out there? Yes, I can. Can I be in inventory, confession, repentance, and amends, prayer, meditation, and helpfulness to others when I'm with my family, the limited time that I have to be with my family? Yes, I can. Can I, so that, can I be those things with my wife? Can I be in inventory, confession, repentance, and amends, and prayer, meditation, and helpfulness to others with my wife? Yes, I can. And by taking the steps themselves and practicing them in all areas of my life, I have a pretty decent life. I don't think it's an accident, by the way, that the next chapters in the big book Alcoholics Anonymous are 2 wives, the family afterwards, and to the employer. I think Bill knew exactly what he was doing. And so, yes, it's important. In AA, I promise you, this is the best hour of any day that I have. But this is not where it matters the most. Where it matters the most is out there. Am I practicing these principles in all my affairs out there? And sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm not. That's just the truth. But I'm recovering when I'm practicing these things, and I'm not when I'm not. There's no such thing as coasting. The only way I ever coast is backwards. I stop looking. I stop inventorying. I stop praying. I devote less time to my prayer and meditation in the morning. As the practice of these things shrink, the automatic pilot, the selfishness, the dishonesty, all of the things that Alcoholics Anonymous has trained me to move away from, creep back in. And I'm left back at the the good news and the bad news, for me, like in my experience, it's not easy to get back to that place where everything was clicking really, really well, and meditation and inventory were working really well together, bringing me to making life easy. Really, that's what it comes down to. When I'm practicing the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, I find life is actually really smooth sailing. I find that I have fewer problems. I have fewer instances where I have issues in relationships, and I have less to have to clean up or make amends for. I manage my money better. I mean, all kinds of things. When I'm in touch with my inventory and I'm doing this thing, with the kind of time and commitment that it requires for me to do it right, which varies at times. Sometimes it requires a little more time. Sometimes it takes a little less time. But the tendency that I have is to shrink that time. I don't know why. I always beat my head against this wall. But the tendency that I have is to shrink that time until I have a problem with somebody or something, and have to dig back in. And it doesn't come back to where it was smooth sailing automatically. I got to literally dig in day by day by day and get back to that place where it was smooth sailing. And that's the good news and the bad news. The reality of that fact has me not slack off nearly as often as I probably would. And if it was always easy to get right back on track, I would have no incentive to continue to do it when I'm doing it well. So AA has been really, really good to me. And look, I don't want to paint a picture of my life as being perfect, which I'm sure nobody got from this talk. There are still lots of things that I'm up to in my life. But as I look back on my life, prior to Alcoholics Anonymous and in the growth that I've had in Alcoholics Anonymous, I would not exchange my life today for any time in the past. It seems to just keep getting better the more that I'm around and the more that I'm practicing it. I'm not somebody who thinks that comes with time. It comes with practice. It comes with my commitment to putting these principles into effect in my life. I'm recovering when I'm doing that, and I'm not when I'm not. That is clear. What else do I want to say? What am I leaving out, Norm?
13th step.
Next week, we're going to do the 13th step, which I've had some experience with as well, unfortunately. No, not at Lester's. I guess I want to say, groups like this and meeting new people in groups like this, sharing information, having a bite to eat afterward with friends and people that I've just met. I am on my A game in AA when I'm asked to do things like this. It's really, really difficult to get up here every week and talk about steps that I'm not doing. And so whenever I'm asked to do a series, there's at least 12 weeks in my life where I'm probably digging into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous personally in a way that I'm not at other times in my life, as sad as that might sound. So I really, really appreciate you folks asking me to be here. I've had a great time, and thank you.
Positive talk.